morning and welcome to the Standing Committee's meeting for Wednesday, June 15th, 2022. All council meetings will be live streamed on the city's website. Our first order of business is roll call. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Mr. Coghill, Ms. Gross, here. Mr. Kraus, here. Mr. O'Connor, here. Mrs. Cal Smith, Ms. Strasburger,
here.
Mr. Wilson, Mr. Lavelle, chair.
Here.
5 members present.
Thank you. Our next order of business is public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that the rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation which are or may be before city council, and profanity will not be permitted. Our first registered speaker is Naomi Mullen. I actually do not see Ms. Mullen with us this morning. That will take us to our second registered speaker, which is Paul O'Hanlon.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good morning. My name is Paul O'Hanlon. I live on South Braddock Avenue in Wilkinsburg, and I'd like to start off by asking if a date has been set yet for a meeting between the city councils of Pittsburgh and Wilkinsburg to discuss the annexation question. If not, please schedule it soon. It's critical that the two councils understand the strengths and needs of the other and see if annexation really offers solutions to the needs of either municipality. I happen to think that the question of annexation is of Wilkinsburg is a distraction and doesn't actually offer solutions to the problems of either Wilkinsburg or Pittsburgh. Let me give you one example. Many of you know me as a result of my disability advocacy, but fewer people know that I worked for over 20 years for Neighborhood Legal Services as a housing lawyer, and along the way I became Pittsburgh's resident expert regarding the Section 8 home ownership program. Most people are familiar with the Section 8 housing choice voucher program as a rental supplement program. I call it the Buy Your Landlord a House program. The rental voucher program does build equity for the landlords, but not the participants. The Section 8 home ownership program changes all of that. What drew my attention to the Section 8 home ownership program was the sustainability built into the program. The Section 8 subsidy can be used not only to help pay the mortgage, but to taxes, insurance, utilities, and even a maintenance and replacement reserve fund. The one limiting factor of the program is price. In round numbers, the program works when there are homes for sale for around $100,000. I think all of the hilltop communities on the edges of Pittsburgh could benefit from this program. On May 24th, Wilkinsburg held a Section 8 homeownership workshop. With very little advertising, we reached the limit size for our space. Over 50 families attended our first workshop, and we have waiting lists for at least 2 more workshops, which we'll be holding this summer. The response was off the scale. Among our more than 300 responses were around 50 who were people with vouchers with the City Housing Authority. Since our program in Wilkinsburg is part of the Allegheny County Housing Authority's jurisdiction, city voucher holders aren't eligible for the county's homeownership program. They would need to attend a homeownership workshop with the City Housing Authority.
Thank you. You can certainly submit the rest of your testimony to the clerk's office. Our next registered speaker is Elena Zaitsev.
Good morning. I'm Elena Zaitsev. I live in the Oak Cliff neighborhood of South Oakland. I'm here to talk about Ordinance 2021-1906. Again, my reason for doing so is not to bore you, but to try to impress upon you just how detrimental this zoning will be to Oakland and the important role you have been given. When this ordinance was first sent to the Planning Commission, Councilman Kraus said that the Planning Commission were the experts about planning and zoning and would be deferred to. That the Planning Commission, those professionals and experts, threw it back to City Council to review and make changes rather than do it themselves is very unsettling. As pointed out by Councilman Kraus, City Council is not the professionals in this area. But here you are with it in front of you and the power to affect the properties and quality of life of Oakland residents. Many residents have put a lot of time and money into understanding this legislation. Though it may not be in your district, you get to vote on it. Were you there on Monday to hear the comments from Oakland residents? Even when prompted to do so, not one person came forward with a positive comment on it. That is a comment in and of itself. No one says having your sunlight, views, and sense of place in Oakland cut off won't be that bad, because it is so obvious that it will be. Whispers of a done deal abound. People ask why I even bother. I am bothering because I care about my neighbors and my neighborhood, now and for the future. The 3D model showing the effect of this rezoning was in council chambers recently. Since we've been saying all along that the issue was scale, some of us felt that a 3D model would show it best. I encourage you to watch the video of it on oakcliff.org. Learn as much as you can before it comes to a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Mark. I apologize, I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name, but Olinson?
Oliniak.
Oliniak. Thank you, Councilman.
Welcome.
Oliniak, yes, thank you. Mark Oliniak, 31 years in South Oakland, 12 years before that in other Oakland locations. I'm here to talk about zoning ordinance 2021-1906, nicknamed Oakland Crossings and the UCMU district. I testified at the Planning Commission yesterday about the overall Oakland plan. It was disturbing to see the confusion, especially related to the Oakland Crossings related portion. Not having access to the hearing video yet, I'm relying on my notes and recollections. I understand that there is a process to provide commissioners' recommendations to council, and it may be unorthodox, but everything about this has been unorthodox so far. So I encourage you to watch the video for yourselves when it is posted. The comments and questions echo many of those from residents concerning heights and massing adjacent to residential properties. They also are something in repetition of their own prior comments about the effect of overly high buildings towering over and boxing in Coulthard Avenue. I took some of their comments as the commissioners being under the impression that the Oakland plan could have some effect on Oakland Crossings, what's coming before you here shortly. One quote from memory referring to Halkett Street north of Louisa Street is, quote, "I can't envision a building 400 feet wide and 120 feet high, so close to single family houses," end quote. And allowing this now would essentially skew any consideration of Coulthard later. I was also a little concerned about something I thought Deputy Director Dash said, like there was some other plan that I'm not aware of to possibly rezone Coulthard in the near future. Given the number of long-term and lifelong current residents who have no plans of leaving, and at least one community land trust house there now, that should give significant weight to the concerns of overbuilding on Halkett Street and McKee Place. I know you saw the some of you saw the 3D model in person, but I would strongly encourage you to watch the video on oakcliff.org. It's oakcliffe.org with better close-up perspectives of key areas. Another great concern of mine is possible loss of inclusionary zoning, IZ, due to the current legal challenge. Walnut Capital's attorney, Mr. Kamen, assured us at Monday's meeting that they are committed to providing actual affordable housing on the sites they own or control. But as I read it, public benefits agreement does not survive the sale of any of those properties and does not apply to any other implementation of the UCMU district. Affordable housing was one of the highest priorities noted in the Oakland plan. If Oakland Crossings is going to continue to be the tail wagging your dog in zoning legislation, I strongly encourage you to reconsider the overly generous point system overall, but in particular to consider adding some fail-safe zoning code now that would alter or limit the point system in case that the IZ is eliminated or otherwise constrained in requiring affordable housing. In closing, I ask you to review, amend, and reduce the allowable heights and massing for more reasonable limits and disallow the wholesale change of zoning for Halkett Street.
Thank you. Our last registered speaker is Andrea Boykowitz.
Good morning. My name is Andrea Boykowicz. I live at 3439 Parkview Avenue in Oakland. I'm an Oakland homeowner, raising my children on the street where I grew up, and I work at Oakland Planning and Development Corporation. I came to talk to you about Council Bill 2021-1906, the so-called Oakland Crossings Bill, because I understood from Councilman Kraus that it would be up for discussion today. However, I don't see it on the posted agenda, so please forgive me if I'm jumping the gun. My purpose in testifying today was to let you know, in case any of you missed yesterday's Planning Commission hearing regarding the Oakland Plan, that provided with more context about the proposed new zoning for Halkett Street, Planning Commissioners seemed to be a little taken aback to realize that they had issued a positive recommendation to you concerning Bill 1906 without understanding that context. Councilman Kraus can confirm that Oakland residents are not in support of Bill 1906. He heard that clearly at the meeting he hosted on Monday evening. I would also like to clarify for everyone, in case there has been any misunderstanding, that Oakland Planning and Development Corporation does not support Bill 1906. Our testimony thanking the mayor and his staff for their intervention on this bill must not be confused for support for the bill itself. And assertions that OPDC drafted or helped to draft the revisions to this bill are categorically untrue. Council Bill 2021-1906 is complicated, politically fraught, and would set a terrible precedent for planning in this city. Should this bill be brought before you today or any day for your consideration, I urge you to consider long and hard before taking any action on it. Thank you.
Thank you. That exhausts our list of registered speakers. Is there anyone with us in chambers wishing to speak? Please come forward, state your name and neighborhood for the record. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning. My name is Bill Schlachter. I'm from Mount Washington. I've been a long-time resident up there for over 12 years. I've addressed you previously before around the short-term rental ordinance. You recently had a public hearing on this issue, and unfortunately you did it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when pretty much most of the community is working, so you heard from a lot of Airbnb business owners. I would like to again reiterate my points around the need to have an amendment for primary residence for the Airbnb. This is a really important issue because if you look in many of the cities across the country, like Denver, like Philadelphia, like LA, like San Francisco, they put this in there because corporations are buying up property in the neighborhoods, not just rentals, but also houses, and they're taking them off the market. There's a reason why primary residence is extraordinarily important. So when you have a corporation who owns 30, 40 units in the city of Pittsburgh, they're taking that away from the average individual who could go buy a home. That is not a good policy for this community. And I think you need to be reminded of who you serve. It is not the businesses, it is the community. And secondly, the issue of multi-units. A lot of these areas are zoned principally for just residential. When you have a place that is 30 units, 40 units, 20 units, all being short-term rental, that is a hotel. You cannot say otherwise. There is no difference. And then if you look at a hotel, they at least have a front desk person. So when you have a multi-unit filled with 30 short-term rentals, it is a hotel. You really need to consider that because there are neighbors of where I live up in Mount Washington. In fact, many places up there are being converted to Airbnbs. They're not happy with this. Teresa knows this, but she's being very quiet on this issue. And leadership is about being proactive. I have had the great fortune in my life to work for Senator Harry Reid. I've worked at Leadership Pittsburgh. Some of you have even spoken to the class about being what a good leader is. I've worked for Mr. Bill Strickland, traveling the world, helping him create centers for the community. But at the end of the day, it is about serving the people of your community, not the businesses who are taking ownership of your community. I would like to reiterate my points. An amendment around primary residence for Airbnb, and also too, the reconsideration of multi-units around Airbnb. That is a slippery slope into a hotel world that our communities just do not want. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak before council?
Good morning. My name is Yvonne F. Brown. I live at 715 Mercer Street in the Hill District. I have the sign in front of the podium. Please get a pencil and paper so that you can take this information. The sign is that in our prisons, when I went to an oversight meeting, I have never been before, went to an oversight meeting about the prison, it was stated that our prisoners are being served feces, and one man said he turned his macaroni and cheese over and it's a half-dead mouse. Now, as Mr. Burgess said, what I'm saying is not true. I'm asking you, who have people that are in the jail, your family members or friends, for them to write you a letter on what they're eating. Write the letter also to Teresa Kell Smith, the president of council. This is 414 Grant Street, room 510, Pittsburgh 15259. And there's also my address, so if you send it to her, please send me one too so I can have documented proof. I look at you as members, and you the lawyer, you seem to be trying to take our rights away to be able to come down and speak when we have a problem. Now, I'm being proactive because we need to make sure that our family members and friends that are in prison are not being mistreated. And there's another thing I would like to say. They're saying that they have a calendar on what they're supposed to eat, but they have where the calendar may say something else, and they're eating bologna sandwiches 3 times a day. Now, to me, it seems like that would be fraud against the company. If you're saying you're giving us hamburgers or whatever, and you're giving bologna sandwiches, I come before you because I believe that this was said. I heard Brandy Fisher, who's an activist, and also the council member, Beth, that's over at county council, because she's having a problem getting into the jail. She wants to do spot checks, not letting them know, but come and see just exactly what our families are getting into. Now, please help me, because you can support me that I'm telling the truth. You send and say what you're eating in the prisons so that we can show counsel to the president and the rest of the council that don't believe. I don't come down here to lie. I heard this at the meeting. I knew nothing about the mice or the feces until they said it at the meeting in front of your warden, Harper. And Harper has, we've been talking about him a bit. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak before council? Yes, sir.
How you doing today, everybody? My name is Will Leslie Tate, and I'm here to address the problem of homelessness in Pittsburgh. I've been up here before, and I told about certain conditions, and as far as people that's homeless in the street that has mental, illness, and young people that are really like kids that are in the street and they're running around half of the night. And there's a lot of people out here homeless because they don't have their identification. I'm one of them. And I have a job pending. And I'm trying to deal with vital statistics. And they told me now that they gave me my mother's last name from a previous marriage, that I have to have a court order to get it changed back over, to my right name. And I just want to say that I think Pittsburgh should address the homeless situation more seriously, because there's a lot of people out there with substance abuse problems, and they need more outreach programs. And I just say, I feel that Pittsburgh needs to, really address the homeless situation better. And giving people tents and sleeping bags, that's not going to do anything. I mean, there's little tent parks all over Pittsburgh, and it seems like every week when I go up to Shepherd's Heart or wherever I go to take a shower, because I'm homeless, and I see like 2 or 3 new homeless people every week. And I just really think Pittsburgh needs to address this problem, and we need like maybe centers where people can have an option to go there and talk to people about housing and different things that they can do to get out of it, to get out of the homeless predicament. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further individuals, please?
My name's Robin Garner. I had a stroke. Okay. I live on the hill. It's this lady down here. Mess with everybody in here. And I talked to Jasmine. She gave a paper for me to say, come in here. Now, every day I see this girl in here. But for all people, me too. What happened? My son came here to stay with me. This girl told me what she wanted to me in the high rise. I told her mother, I live here. I don't pay nothing for her, nothing. It's so bad in the high rise. Crack, crack, crack. They sleep in here. Why, I wonder, I can't sleep. I got my son with me to stay with me. This going on all week, in and out, the cop down here for her. Who gonna help me? I told everybody in the high rise, come on down here, fight and fight. They scared, not me. I here by myself, my son. He got 7 kids. He raised his kids. He can help me. I can't walk like that. Somebody do something to the high rise for me. It's for me, not for everybody, for me. Please help me. That's how I want to know.
You gotta say your address.
715 Mercy. Leroy. Yes, because I had a stroke. So I'm telling you, please help me down here. That's all. Thank y'all.
Ma'am, when you exit, there's a door. Please go see the woman behind the door. Provide your name and number so someone can follow up with you.
I will do that.
Are there any further speakers before council today? Any further speakers? Seeing none, that moves us on to our standing committee agenda. The first committee of the day is Finance and Law, which is chaired by myself. We have one deferred paper, Bill 407.
Bill 407, resolution authorizing the city to accept a payment of $30,000 from Prime Gov Solutions as amicable resolution of a contract dispute.
Motion to approve.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. New papers, Bill 429.
Bill 429, resolution providing for an agreement with the Center for Hearing and Deaf Services, Inc. and Global Wordsmiths for the purposes of providing language accessibility and communication services in an amount not to exceed $60,000.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 430.
Bill 430, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Office of Management and Budget to pay membership dues to the University of Pittsburgh's Connect program for 3 years at a cost not to exceed $15,000 annually.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion, Councilman Wilson.
What is it called? Invoices. On our previous invoices, we had a membership fee. Is this related to that?
This was, in years past, we had approved this via our invoices. We would waive the rules of council to do so. However, Madam President preferred it to come over as a resolution.
Okay, that's what this is. Okay, great.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 432.
Bill 432, resolution authorizing pursuant to Chapter 166 of the City Code, the mayor and director of the Department of Innovation and Performance to donate personal property valued at $92,639 to Computer Reach.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all
Yeah.
those, sorry, Councilwoman.
Well, we do have members from Computer Reach here. I didn't know if they wanted to take a minute to just discuss what the bill is and what they do at the table or at the podium.
And just give us your name and title for the record.
Certainly. Good morning. My name is Heidi Norman. I'm the Director of Innovation and Performance at the City of Pittsburgh. I'm really happy to present to Council this legislation this morning. It is the establishment of a partnership between the City of Pittsburgh and Computer Reach, an organization that has been for a long time in Pittsburgh, helping folks to receive devices, computer devices and others, and to learn how to use them safely on the internet. This is toward our efforts to close the digital divide here in Pittsburgh, and we are so pleased that our initial donation will be in excess of $92,000 in value of devices. This will include desktop computers, laptop computers, monitors, mice, keyboards, and the like. And I would like the Executive Director of Computer Reach, Dave Sevick, to say a few words in appreciation for this new partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, City Council, for inviting me. My name's Dave Sevick. I'm the Executive Director of Computer Reach. We're located at 1 DRV Drive in Wilkinsburg, PA, behind the Rite Aid Pharmacy along the railroad tracks. We recycle and distribute about 3,000 computers a year. We've been around for 22 years. We've been recycling computers from the City of Pittsburgh in a small way for a long time, and it's really pleased that we can do it in an official large way with the city right now. So we thank you. I'll answer any questions you might have.
Very much. Councilman Coghill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's all recycled in value, and we at $92,000. That's all recycled.
It's all recycled,
Comes to
used.
You fix them, you get them back up and
Right.
running.
We either fix them, get them back in the community, which is our primary purpose for reuse. The things that we cannot reuse, we recycle responsibly with an R2 recycler.
Thank you, David.
Thank Councilwoman.
Thank you.
And I had one more question.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand, maybe you can correct me if I'm mistaken, but that this is the exact type of setup that you would prefer as a Computer Reach, the large contracts where you might be getting a bulk, a set of monitors, a set of computers, rather than having to sift through one-offs from individual donations. That might be a little bit more difficult. Just for, in case anyone from the public is watching, I know that was a clarification that I got in 2020 that, this is now a new place where I can take my old laptop and donate it. And sometimes the work that's involved with one-off donations is more work than it's worth. Is that correct?
Residents of the entire Southwest Pennsylvania can do one-off, onesie, twosie donations, we call them. Anybody can do that.
Great.
But large pickups, like we do for corporations, are much easier to organize when there's a large pallet and a truck involved.
Great to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wilson?
Yeah, this is, I just had a question. Is this recycling or reuse? I know probably someone.
Both.
Does this. Oh, both.
Both.
Okay.
But we're a nonprofit organization, 501c3. So our mission is reuse and digital literacy. We recycle things that we can't use, and we refurbish and reuse everything that we can. We track all the serial numbers. We can tell you where the computers went, how they're being used, and how they're being disposed of responsibly.
It says that the value is $92,000. Does that mean that there's a lot of equipment coming your way, or not that much?
According to what Director Norman said, it looks like 324 desktops, 74 laptops, 427 monitors,
Okay.
43 keyboards. I'm sorry, 243, 170 mice.
All right,
And
thanks.
they assess the value. Our value is 0 until we fix the devices. It comes into our inventory as 0 value until we can actually fix it.
Okay. No cell phones?
We do recycle them, but I don't see any in this order.
Okay.
But we do that.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Any second round, Councilman Coghill?
One more, David.
Sorry, Councilman LaValle, I'm trying to get your attention to.
Someone from.
Sorry.
Okay, well, I'm second round, so if you want to defer, I'll defer to
Councilwoman
Councilwoman
Gross?
Gross.
I apologize for not being there today. I am curious, I think I caught what is the gist of this project. The property is valued at $92,000, but really we're not, there's no cash being exchanged. We're just giving you a lot of our electronics that we were disposing of. Am I right?
That's right.
Thank you. So I'm really excited about this, and I'm curious about your total organizations, donations, and how much you receive, and from where do you usually receive the donated or waste electronics? Is this all Allegheny County or regional and in scope? And then about how much of them are you actually able to reuse?
It's a good question. I'd say about 2/3 of what we get is not usable and has to be disassembled and recycled. We use a recycler in Ohio that's very reputable, works with all the hospitals here. They usually stop by and pick up our e-waste. That 1/3, our output is usually about 3,000 computers a year that we get out to families and nonprofits in the Pittsburgh area.
So the donations are all going to the Pittsburgh area. That's wonderful. I believe that we're all a little more conscious these days about e-waste recycling as well. And what I've been listening to on the news is that we, in the United States, are having, like with everything else, supply chain issues, right? Especially around semiconductors and microchips and the rare earth minerals that are really terrible for the world to be mining. New, but we still are because we're all dependent on our electronic devices. So do you know that you can tell us a little more about the recycling supply chains there?
The machines that we get are usually 3 to 10 years old. The precious metals that are in those computers are not reusable. You can fix a computer that doesn't take a lot of effort and put it back into the community. As far as the rare earth metals, the logic boards, all of the toxic chemicals in there, they all go back to the recycler and they take care of that. Our goal is service to the community, digital literacy and such. So we're not a for-profit recycler. We are a refurbisher.
I understood that part.
Does that make sense?
I understood that part. But okay. So maybe you can just tell me who is the recycler, and I'll ask the recycler that question.
Pardon me? I missed that.
I'm sorry. I know I have a terrible connection. If you can tell me who your recycling is going to, then
Absolutely.
I can ask that recycler that question.
We're very happy with our recycler. We've been through many. We're using Infinite Electronic Recycling in Wintersville, Ohio. They have a facility that's as big as a Home Depot. It's 100,000 square feet. They have great record keeping. They're an R2 registered recycler. They're reputable. I know they take care of multiple hospitals in the area. So they usually stop by and get 2 or 3 pallets worth of our leftover computers that are responsibly recycled.
That's very helpful. I'm excited about the program, and I thank you for your work. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I sit down?
No. Hold on. Second round, Councilman Coghill.
Hey, David. Yeah, I'm just trying to get an idea. So, and I heard you, inform us as to the number of computers, a number of laptops. And I'm just curious as to if we were to purchase those new versus you rebuilding or refurbishing them. So I'll just throw out an example. If we get 100 laptops for $92,000, how many would you be putting in the street refurbished? Is it 200 or is it twice the volume?
Well, it depends on the quality of the donation.
Right.
You know, sometimes when you get a new corporation that donates, like the city, you get a large volume. I think we're going to have a couple of rooms full of computers. We don't know the quality of those computers if they were well maintained by the city. So normally it's about 1/3 of what we get will be able to go back out in the community. The rest we have to sort through with our team and dispose of properly. We keep serial numbers on everything. We keep good records.
So you're a for-profit. I mean, somebody has to
We're a
pay
nonprofit.
you to. You're a nonprofit.
We're a
Okay.
501c3 nonprofit.
Gotcha. Okay, so that explains it.
Right.
Okay,
And
so
our
we're
mission
giving
is
you
digital.
92
Our mission is digital literacy for all. We're
Right.
able to provide computers and classes and camps that go with those devices. They're usually rewards for attending a literacy camp with our.
That's great, David. Great work, and that was my question as to who's paying you. So that explains a lot.
Individual I mean, how do we keep Computer Reach running? Individual donations, grants from all the foundations in Pittsburgh.
Right.
Selling
Right.
some of the computers that are a little bit nicer. We have a little computer store. We sell computers between $50 and $300.
Right.
If they're a little bit nicer, we sell them to community to
Gotcha.
help pay the rent.
So it's obviously much cheaper than buying new, and the $92,000 is the value of the equipment you are receiving and refurbishing.
That is the city's assessed value.
Got it.
The assessed value when it reaches my warehouse this week will be zero.
Right.
Until
you
I actually
them.
fix
Right,
everything.
right.
Because right now we don't know what works and what doesn't.
Right, and 2/3 typically have
Correct.
to be
Depending on the
recycled.
value.
Gotcha.
Of
Okay.
the,
No,
Does that
thanks,
help?
thanks, David. I think you can sit down. I'll check with the chair.
Did everybody get a question?
Thank you. I don't believe there's any further questions from members, so thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That takes us to Bill 437.
Bill 437, resolution adopting the reapportionment plan for the city council districts in the city of Pittsburgh as set forth in the final report of the reapportionment advisory committee.
Motion to hold.
Go ahead.
Oh, cablecast public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill be held for a cablecast public hearing. Bill 442.
Bill 442, resolution requesting and authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Management and Budget and the directors of the Department of Finance and Public Works to explore entering into an agreement or agreements with the Center for Employment Opportunities to establish a program providing for employment opportunities for individuals recently returned home from incarceration.
Motion to approve with brief discussion.
Second.
I believe we have online with us Jacqueline Weinberg, I think, from, and I'm not sure if there's anyone else from that organization.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, I'll say a few words and then I'll come back to you. Pittsburgh is wrestling with multiple public health crises, institutional racism, and its intergenerational consequences, the global COVID-19 pandemic and its effects, and the local epidemic of violence and crime. Historically, Pittsburgh has over-relied on the 3 Ps, policing, prosecution, and prisons, in an attempt to reduce violence and strengthen community safety. This strategy has not only failed to yield long-term results, it has come at an extremely high social cost to many of our most vulnerable communities. As past public safety practices have failed to yield long-term results for Pittsburgh, we have together as a city decided to initiate a comprehensive coordinated strategy that recognizes policing, prosecution, and prisons alone cannot stem the tide of violence on their own. As a city, we have made a fundamental commitment to peace and strive to eliminate all incidents of violence and crime. Violence is not an unsolvable problem. Violence is not an unsolvable problem, but rather a public health crisis that is treatable and preventable through an intentional, coordinated, and sustained efforts. I would like to just, from the very beginning, I want to thank Mayor Ed Gainey and for his leadership. I'd like to thank the opportunity to work with Lisa Frank and the administration and to be a co-author on the Plan for Peace. We will probably be talking about this over the next year or so, but in essence, it is a 6-part program. Most of you have seen, many of you were at the press conference. I will just summarize it a little bit so that you will see this program in its context. It is a public health approach to violence reduction and to peace. It uses data and evidence, and it balances 4 sort of things in a comprehensive, coordinated way. It has community partnerships. It has people in the community, such as the outreach workers, actually doing outreach to those most vulnerable populations. I believe yesterday the administration released the Stop the Violence mini grants that will provide up to $100,000 or so to local community-based efforts so that the communities will partner with the city to reduce crime and to do prevention, intervention, and reintegration efforts in the communities in which they stand. We are, through the Office of Health and Safety, providing the needed trauma-based therapy and approach and care using all of the resources that the at-risk population needs. Policing, we're doing the right policing, doing the area of concern, focused deterrent, and I'm grateful for Chief Bickerstaff and her team and their great work in this area. And then, of course, there is the last pillar, which is a healthy environment, which really means community development, making sure that these communities at risk have not only violence reduction, but have prosperity, have affordable housing, have all the amenities of a good school and resources and stores and places to play, work, and worship. Now, that brings us to today's bill, which fits in the area of partnerships. And this is another partnership that we're bringing to the city to deal with one of the most at-risk populations for future violence interaction, and that's those who are firmly incarcerated. As you know, that population has a very difficult time when they come home. They come back to the communities in which they are from. They have a difficult time of getting employment because of, despite the ban the box that we did many years ago, we found out that what employers do is they just stop hiring black and brown people, right? And so as a way to try to get around the background check stuff. So with this program, which has been very successful in Philadelphia, and grateful that they're going to replicate it at scale here in Pittsburgh, what it does is it employs formerly incarcerated people. It pays them daily. It provides them not just with a job, but it provides them with the soft skills needed to be successful in terms of interview skills and interpersonal activities and job search and all the things that are necessary to make them productive citizens. And so this part is a program, part of several programs that are needed. In order to be a city for all, we must be all in for the city. All of us have the role to play. All of us must participate together to make Pittsburgh a great city and a safer city for all of its residents. And so kind of with that introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Jacqueline and let her share with you an overview of their program in much more detail.
Thank you, Councilman Burgess, and thank you, council members, for having us here today. I'm Jacqueline Weinberger. I'm the Regional Director for the Mid-Atlantic region for the Center for Employment Opportunities. Our program is a 4-stage evidence-based model that solely works with individuals coming home from incarceration. And so once individuals get referred to our program, we bring them in for an orientation. That is paid. And then right after, we immediately hire them and begin to work on transitional work crews. Currently in our Pittsburgh location, we work with Arconic as well as the URA, and hopefully soon with you all doing work in and around the city of Pittsburgh. Once they come into our program, we provide them, like Councilman Burgess said, with soft skills, but a very intentional job coaching and job development to not just get folks connected to work, but connect them to meaningful work, career pathways, jobs that are going to give them a living wage. And we work with them until we find a good employer match for them, and then we place them into full-time employment. Once we do that, we continue to work with individuals for 365 days past that date of first employment. And while we're doing a lot in our retention services over that year, our main goal is to keep individuals connected to work, because we know that if individuals stay connected to work, the less likely they are to recidivate. So we hope to be one part of a player in being able to help with reducing of violence in the city. And I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Councilman Burgess. Good. President Smith?
Thank you. So I came in late, I apologize. I just want to be clear. This is to help people get hired within DPW?
No, they hire them themselves.
They hire them?
Yes.
So I just want to know why, is there any effort to also make sure DPW is part of that? Because we actually have people in DPW that have criminal histories. Some have, as you know, Director, 10-year federal prison records, and I actually helped the one person get a job, and they said he is the best employee they've ever had in DPW. So I don't know why we are not doing that on our own. And one of the conversations I had was we also eliminate people if they have, if they fail a drug test, even though might have a medical marijuana card, they may not have used it. I don't know. But no, I just want to know what we're doing other than this, other than hiring somebody. What are we doing as a city? Do you want to come forward, one of you?
Yeah, but while we're doing that, I want to make it clear that this program is cost-free to the city.
I don't care if it's cost-free. I want to know what we're doing as a city.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Jake Pollack, Director of the Office of Management and Budget. Thanks, Councilwoman, for this question. I think that this, among other partnerships, create very beneficial training opportunities that can then themselves become pathways into city employment. And so I believe that the goal that you're outlining and the goal of this program are very compatible. We have a similar relationship with Land Force, which provides similar types of training and skill development for folks
started in District 2, let me just say, but go ahead.
I certainly believe that, and I wasn't aware of that, but I'm not surprised to learn that. This, I believe, could be one of several opportunities for folks to, particularly those who are reentering citizens who need these kinds of opportunities, to be plugged into training opportunities and skill development opportunities, to then develop the skills necessary that could make them strong and competitive applicants for eventually for city positions. And we're eager to establish numerous partnerships of this kind in order to build that pipeline into employment. So I think that programs that can assist residents, again, initially being employed by an outside partner, but who can collaborate with us on conducting this work, is a great way to give those folks the necessary skills and learning and connection to our teams and understanding of the ways in which we do this work that then will make them excellent applicants for city jobs after that sort of training program. So the two are deeply connected, and we're
I hear
working.
what you're saying, but I just want to make sure that that if we're going to be a city that's saying that we're open and want to give people a chance, that our policies are actually reflecting that, and it's just internal. We don't need to have a special group or special anybody come in and tell us how to do it. Let's just do it. And I feel the same way about when I think I talked to you about people that don't have a driver's license who can't get employed with DPW, but they can do all the work. They just can't drive a vehicle. Well, why do 4 people need to drive somebody go jump in the front seat? I mean, why can't the 2 in the front have to have a license, 2 in the back not? Because we've seen people in your district who called us who said that they couldn't get employed because of that. We've seen people who couldn't get employed because they failed the medical marijuana test, but yet we're saying that, we want to decriminalize marijuana. So I just feel like we contradict ourselves, and if we really want to give people a chance, let's just do it. That's all I'm going to say.
You have mentioned that to me in the past, and I think, again, it's a great point. And we have, the administration, has tasked Assistant Director Newman with leading our efforts around modernizing our policies and building some of these collaborations for exactly this purpose. I think it is a both-and question, right? It is both a question of modernizing our policies and approaches and fixing some of the inconsistencies that you've rightly identified, as well as using partnerships with initiatives like this, like Land Force and like others, to build the skill base, and then to bring those 2 things together through hiring out of these programs into our workforce. So we're 100% on the same page as what you've just laid out, moving both of those efforts in tandem to arrive at the same result.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill?
Yes, thank you. On its face, I think it sounds like a good program. I really do. I've heard many people incarcerated coming out of prison, and the challenges that they have, whether it's not a driver's license, they don't typically have the financial means to, go searching for a job. They really need to go to work right away. And some have worked out to be great for me, some have not. A lot of them were like, after a month in the roofing business, they wanted to go back to prison, believe it or not.
We must be in and out of this.
So, it sounds like a really good program. Anything we can do to help people get back on their feet after being in prison is a good thing. Most of the time, that's what they need, is an opportunity. So I was glad to provide that for many people in the past. I guess my question is this: where do we provide them with a phone number when they come out of prison, or do we search after them, or are they to contact us? What's the outreach as to, to let them know this program is available?
Amy.
So individuals can contact us directly. We can, our goal is to really develop community partnerships where individuals who are coming home from incarceration are, whether that's community organizations, parole and probation officers, other community-based organizations who are doing similar work with us. And we are happy to give our information out. As well as we do recruitment too. And so if there are opportunities or job fairs or places that you all think that we should go to recruit, we are happy to do that. We do also have flyers and an outreach plan. And so our goal is to serve as many people as we possibly can.
Yeah, that's great, Amy. And
I misspoke her name. It's Jacqueline.
Jacqueline.
I didn't look at my notes, and I said Amy. It's Jacqueline.
So that's Reverend Burgess as well. No, Jacqueline, that's great. And you mentioned the flyer, just the many challenges. I mean, might not have access to the computer to get online to find out where you're at and who you are. But just a simple flyer as you're coming out the gate would be great. I feel like just to put it in their hand. And I don't know if you do that. I heard you mention flyer, but I would just suggest give them that flyer as they're walking out, and then with a phone number on it, and make it as simple as possible for them to get in contact with you.
Yes, we do have flyers, and we are working on figuring out how we can get them into the discharge facilities and things like that to be able to get folks even before they walk out the door with the information.
Great. That's all for me, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members?
Before we vote,
Councilman?
I just want to say one thing. And certainly we are grateful for the partnership with Jake Pollock. But I do want to say to our viewing public and to anyone who is listening, we can solve this problem. We can reduce violence and make our city a city of peace. We can, and we will do that. We will reduce our violence. We will make our city safer and stronger. And I want to make it very clear that the city is working in concert to do just that and it's something we will succeed in doing. It will take all of us and a little bit of prayer, but where we are able to make this city a greater city for all of its residents, all of us will succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. If no other speakers, I'll simply say this partnership makes all the sense in the world, not only as a violence prevention effort, but the other reality is we as a city cannot maintain our land to the level that we should be able to. And unfortunately, if our current financial projections stay in place, we won't be in a position to hire more individuals to come on board to maintain our land. So partnering with them where they can take individuals as part of a violence deterrent model, but also then help us maintain our land. It's a win-win for all. So, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Thank you. We now need a motion to approve the invoices.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Invoices are approved. We now need a motion to approve the interdepartmental transfers.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Transfers are approved. Need a motion to approve the P cards.
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? P cards are approved. That takes us to Public Safety Services Committee, which is chaired by Councilman O'Connor. Our first supplemental paper is Bill 453.
Bill 453, resolution amending resolution number 358, which authorized the mayor and director of the Department of Public Safety to enter into an amended agreement with the Pittsburgh Public Safety Supply, Inc. for the provision of uniforms, duty equipment, and related tailoring and embroidering services for the Department of Public Safety by extending the term for 1 additional year.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 454.
Bill 454, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Public Safety on behalf of the city to enter into a professional services agreement with the Pennsylvania Resources Council for waste management services in conjunction with the city of Pittsburgh's Independence Day Festival at an amount not to exceed $7,500.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 455.
Bill 455, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Public Safety on behalf of the city to enter into a professional services agreement with Zambali Firework Manufacturing Company for the display of a fireworks show in conjunction with the city of Pittsburgh's Independence Day Festival at an amount not to exceed $67,375.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That takes us to our Public Works Committee, chaired by Councilman Coghill. We have one bill, Bill 427.
Bill 427, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement or use of existing agreements between the city and Juliandra Jones, Naja Moon, Cameron Nesbitt, and Mikkel Owana for the creation and installation of public art at Homewood Park at a cost not to exceed $120,000.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Brief discussion.
Discussion, Councilman Coghill?
No, yeah, I just had a question as to, is this several artworks or is it one big piece? And is anybody online to speak to that?
Yes. I believe Chris Hornstein is with us to discuss. I think it's one big piece, but he would know better than I. Director Hornstein?
Can we call her to the table?
He's online.
Somebody hear that?
Oh, is there someone in the
We have
chambers
Sarah
for
Minner
this?
here as well.
I'm sorry. Please come forward.
Sorry about that, Sarah.
This is a DPW piece of legislation, but I'm Sarah Minner. I'm the Public Art and Civic Design Manager within the Department of City Planning.
Yeah.
And we've been working.
I saw you holding up four. Is
Four.
that four pieces? Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
4 individual artists, 4 pieces in one site.
Gotcha. Okay, and does that include the material or just whatever material it might be? Is
All
give them
inclusive.
the supplies and the artist's fee, of course.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I really had. I just didn't know if it was one big piece or several. Thank you, Sarah.
President Smith?
Yeah, I just want to thank Sarah, Director Pollock, Commander Ripple for an incident that happened with our public art in Mount Washington. They worked really late into a Saturday evening. I guess you're familiar with the issue. Really late into Saturday night. And so I just want to thank you for all the work that you all did in resolving the best you could that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That takes us to Land Use and Economic Development Committee, chaired by Councilman Wilson. Our first deferred paper is Bill 1906.
Bill 1906, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code, Title 9, Zoning Code, Article 2, Base Zoning District, Article 5, Use Regulations, Chapter 911, Primary Uses, Section 91102, Use Table in Section 91104, Use Standards, Article 6, Development Standards, Chapter 915, Chapter 91504, Environmental Performance Standard, and Chapter 919, Signs, and Chapter 922, Development Review Procedures, 92215, to create a new urban center mixed-use zoning district and related zoning regulations.
Motion to approve. Discussion.
Second.
Discussion, Councilman Wilson?
Yeah, I'd like to hand it over to,
So this amendment.
He needs a mic.
I'm sorry, the public can't hear. You want to come to the
table?
And
And just us, your name and position for the record.
Oh, I didn't know.
My name is Jesse Exelis, Assistant City Solicitor. We were just, as parliamentarian right now, but because this amendment was like put in before or after the agenda was set, it would be recommended to have this put in the next agenda to discuss, because under the Sunshine Act law, like the amendments that are, if council's gonna do official action on this, it would need to be put to the public for them to see before official action could be taken. So there could be discussion, but no official action.
So what I was going to do is, I was going to hand it off to Councilman Kraus. So hopefully he was able to hear what your recommendation is. Councilman?
I'll reiterate, as Councilman Kraus may be coming on, that given that the amendment was not provided to council before the agenda was set, we can discuss it. I believe we can even vote it, but we would need to hold it so the public can then provide comment on it.
Yeah, you just couldn't take like an actual official action. So if
we can amend it.
Yeah, you can amend it, but then the actual official
we need to vote to hold as amended. Right.
Thank you.
Well, couldn't we take public comment next week?
Well, we would vote to hold. That way the public sees the bill as amended.
Right.
We would then vote on the bill next week, so they have time to comment.
Okay.
So, not seeing Mr. Kraus, I'll make a motion to amend. There's a written amendment on the table, and I'll do this on behalf of Councilman Kraus.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any, all those in favor say aye.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, your audio from Chambers is cutting in and out very badly. I could
Oh,
not
yours is
hear
on.
Mr. Burgess.
It was me. What I did was, on behalf of Mr. Kraus, I made a motion to amend, and then following that amendment and whatever, at some point I'll make a motion to hold. But I made a motion to amend, of which it was passed. So it is, the bill at this point is amended.
Oh, but did anyone read the amendment?
No, we did not read the amendment.
We passed it. I mean, did anyone open the email?
Well, we have the amendments before us.
You have them in print, and
Yes.
I think those
And
of us that
Luis
have them.
did email the amendments to all members as well.
Yeah, just a few moments ago, in fact. And so I would like for us to read the amendments.
Out loud?
Absolutely. I will do so if I can get it open on my screen. I'm happy to do so. Do I have the floor, Mr. Chair?
I mean, I can certainly do it.
Thank you.
So We did vote to amend the bill, so we're now on the bill as amended.
Oh, I would like to register a no vote then on the amendment, but I would also like to continue this discussion.
Okay, that's fine. So
Thank you.
we affirmative recommendation on a motion to amend the bill. So on the very first page, the building length of street-facing facades is limited to a maximum of 400, is what it said previously. Now it is 425 feet, so the amendment is 25 feet. On the second page, under Public Benefits Agreement, there's an amendment that this is entered into the 6th June. This is entered into the 6th day of June, which has been, it was originally in March. It is now being changed to June. On page 2, under section D, the commitment to sustainability, sentence was added. So Walnut agrees that all Walnut projects developed within the UCMU district will be developed, and the amendment says, so that they will be able to obtain at least one performance point pursuant to the standards set forth in the zoning code's high performance buildings new construction. Should Walnut project fail and it adds to meet this standard, that's the amendment for that section. Then continued on page 3 under J, J has been added, and the amendment reads, commitment regarding 3380 Boulevard of the Allies, any redevelopment of the property located at 3380 Boulevard of the Allies, Pittsburgh, PA 15213, block and lot number 28P305, shall reuse and preserve the facade of the former Isley's building located on the property. On page 4, which I believe is our last amendment, under section 6, which is the entire agreement, it states the amendment is, this agreement is intended to supersede the agreement of the parties executed on March 6, 2022. And those are all the amendments. Is there any further discussion from members?
Oh, absolutely. Do I still have more on discussion?
Councilwoman Gross.
Yeah, sorry. I had a really bad connection with the laptop I was trying to work on at home, and so I actually am in the process of trying to switch, but I'll keep talking here. And if you get feedback, I apologize. I'm just having technical difficulties here. So there I am. I've got something happen. I'm going to switch computers really quick. Can you hear me here?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Okay, I apologize for that. This is a better connection. So I think we have several levels of things happening here. I'm glad that the solicitor's office communicated that we have to hold for public hearing. I want to say several things.
Councilwoman, just a correction. We do not have to hold for a public hearing. We just have to hold the bill so the public has sufficient time to see the amendments.
What is sufficient?
We have to hold so they have time to provide public comment on the amendments, but we do not have to hold for a public hearing.
Sir, so that's one issue. I'll just continue with my issues. I'm alarmed that we got these really during the current session. It really was just minutes ago that we received the email of these amendments. I do believe that for zoning changes that have already been through Planning Commission, if there are substantive amendments at the council table, that the zoning in its entirety must go back to Planning Commission. So there is definitely some, I have looked there, and I can tell, can you all hear me clearly? I still have a choppy connection.
We can hear you. You're breaking up a little, but we can hear you.
All right, I'm going to try turning my camera back off to see if that helps. I'm so sorry.
I've got it hardwired in and everything, but it must be the computer. So the definition of what is substantive changes, I think, needs to be communicated to council and to the public. I would assume that our solicitor, not council solicitor, but the mayor's solicitor's office would need to make an opinion about whether, what is substantive change that requires a return to planning commission, and whether this meets that definition. And then secondly, the mayor's solicitor's office has already told council that the public needs time to review and make comment. Typically, when council introduces a new paper on a Tuesday, that paper waits 8 days before it's even provisionally discussed, right? And so I believe that we're probably looking at a 2-week window, right? There's usually a full 2 weeks before it is voted finally. And so I would suggest that this should probably wait at least several weeks before it's even voted provisionally. But I have an even bigger issue, which I've said at this table before. I said it originally, and so I said it during the Peduto administration when it was first introduced, and I'll say it again, which is that the way I read our zoning code, there are 2 ways to introduce an amendment, a zoning amendment, which is for the landowner to rezone parcels, to change parcels from one zoning to another. The property owner appeals for the change to the planning department. And that goes through a path that takes it to planning commission before it ever gets to city council table. It either comes with a recommendation from planning or it never comes to our table. The only other way that I read an amendment to have a path is for the council, a council member to be the sponsor. We do not have either situation here. The owner claims to not be the sponsor. No council member claims to be the sponsor. We have a mayor's office. I would not like to be interrupted. I have the floor. And we have a mayor, right? We had one mayor who claimed to be the sponsor. And Mr. Krause, if you could maybe turn off your microphone, that would help with the sound. I appreciate that. There's a lot of feedback.
There is feedback, but just a point of clarity as chair. Councilman Krause is the actual sponsor of this amendment. Please continue. I apologize.
Councilman Krause was not the sponsor of this amendment when it was put on the table. He's the sponsor of the amendment today. He was not the sponsor at all of the amendment to the public realm district in Oakland. And he has in multiple public testimony, it's in record, it's in Legistar, it's in our record. He did not submit the change to this map last year and has multiple times, I'm sorry, but this is true, right? That Mayor Peduto was the sponsor, supposedly, but that is not legal. And here's why I'm not splitting hairs. I do not want any mayor moving forward from here to sponsor amendments to any one of our districts, right? The planning department has the authority and the jurisdiction to amend our zoning maps. And that is the way it's written for good reason, because they do all of the public process and have, again, it's a established path that we have all been living with in our ordinance. This has been an attempt to circumvent the normal public process, both in the way it was introduced, which should not have been introduced. We should never have forwarded it to Planning Commission. I believe I voted no on the referral to Planning Commission as well. And then, as we've heard in multiple times in public testimony, we shouldn't allow this specific bill, 1906, to be traveling down this process that is in parallel and in competition to the work that our own planning department has been doing. God knows, I could be using them in my own district. I would much rather have had the planning department moving forward a Bloomfield master planning process that we could have easily started 2 to 3 years ago. But they have been doing a master planning process in Oakland. And it looks to me that like some property owners didn't like the way it was going and used the mayor's office to circumvent it. And I am deeply concerned. I do not want to see this happening now. And I definitely do not want to see it happen moving forward, that we are giving large landholders some special roundabout, some special getting around the ordinances and our own public processes, and some kind of like red carpet path to zoning. And so I have a lot of objections here, and but I'll let others speak.
Mr. Chair, I apologize for joining late. I was on a really important call. Can I speak, or is there a different order?
No, go ahead, Councilman Kraus.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize to everyone for missing the beginning of this conversation. I got pulled away on an important phone call, but here now. Forgive me if I repeat anything along the way. The bill having been originally introduced by the Peduto administration came before the council at the end of last year. And one of the first things that I had ever learned as a member of council was the importance of open, honest discussion. That anyone has the right to put a bill on the table to have public discourse on it. And that it is not the role of the council to stop discourse. That we may look at that bill and we may think it's the dumbest thing we have ever seen, and we have absolutely no intention of passing it. We may find the bill has some merit and needs discussion, and we may amend and make some kinds of considerations and ultimately pass it, or we may think it's just utterly brilliant, and why didn't we think of this before, and we need to move this ahead. But to squelch the conversation, I think it is in the direct disinterest of elected bodies. And so the bill did come in. It was introduced through the Land Use Committee by the Peduto administration. And then upon review of that legislation and the fact that it was going to be sent over to Planning Commission for review and recommendation, which is the process, my concern was I believe the bill was overly generous, that it provided too much relief, and that much of it could be in conflict of the Oakland plan, which was openly being discussed at the time. And so we worked to reduce the bill, and everything that we did in terms of the amendment that I put forward was to either reduce or to deny. My concern was that if it did go to Planning Commission, came back with an approval, a positive approval, we would not have the opportunity to do the reductions afterwards. And so that was the motivation behind why we worked. My office worked to do the amendment to reduce them before we sent to Planning Commission. Councilwoman Gross, forgive me, I don't have everything in front of me. I believe I did sponsor that amendment, but that does not definitively make me the sponsor of the legislation. It's as though any bill comes over from the administration, Councilman O'Connor chooses to amend, and then we ultimately pass. It doesn't make it Councilman O'Connor's legislation. It still has its origin where it has its origin. So we did send it over to Planning Commission. It was very hotly debated. I know Director Pollock is here to open up the discussion, but I'll just make one more comment before I ask Director Pollock to come up to the table to speak. But the idea that came out of Planning Commission after the debate was that, and there was conversations between the mayor's team, the planning department, stakeholders in Oakland, as to how to sort of put the best plan forward, if you will. And Planning Commission agreed that if these changes were made, they could send it to council for a positive recommendation, which is what is before us today. We offered that amendment, inclusive of the changes that Planning Commission wished to see. And that is the bill that is before us today and the process by which it got here. But unless I'm corrected by someone in law, that does not make anybody the sponsor other than the administration. We did have changes in administration, and it is now Mayor Gainey, and that has to bring this before council and be part of our discussions. But I hope that's helpful in how the process happened for us to get here. There will be a minor amendment offered up today, and Director Pollock is here to speak about that as well. It does add additional footage to the grocer building so as to permit the loading and unloading of trucks that will support the grocer to be able to do everything inside and to keep waste management, cardboard, and everything like that within a confined area and not out in open space to be disruptive in any way. So with that, could I please ask Director Pollock to come up? I know
He's coming to the table,
here.
Councilman.
Okay. Oh, is he coming to the table physically? Thank you. And I do apologize for not being there in person today. I have some things going on that prevent me from being there. But Director Pollock, good morning. I don't see you.
I'm here at the table.
Oh, there you are. I see you. Hi, Director. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you,
and,
Councilman.
Apologize for my voice. I think I'm about to lose it from the last couple of days here. But Director, I'd I would like to open the floor to you. I know you're here to speak in the positive affirmation of what is before us, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Councilman. And just again, for the record, Jake Pollack, Director, Office of Management and Budget. Councilman Kraus, you frankly have covered the majority of the salient points. The legislation, as you noted, was introduced last year, but was in the hands of the Planning Commission during the expiration of the previous council term, and so survived that process because of where it was, and so was returned to the active agenda this year. Mayor Gainey, upon taking office, charged myself and Chief Economic Development Officer Kyle Chintalopoli with working closely with the affected Oakland stakeholders as well as the proposed developer in discussing modifications to what was then proposed as OPRE, to bring it into closer alignment with the thinking underlining the still in draft form and not yet formally adopted, but nonetheless well-developed Oakland plan, as well as to adhering to community desires in that regard. We, of course, held a number of consultations with the public. We held our own community meeting on this topic and then met with the two relevant RCOs, OPDC and OBID, to gather additional feedback on suggested changes. We then worked closely with the proposed redeveloper and their legal counsel on, and the planning department and others, and the city's law department, of course, on revisions to what was before council at that time, or before the planning commission at that time, beg your pardon, and arrived at a agreed to set of modifications to that legislation that were presented to the planning commission. Those modifications were affirmatively recommended at planning commission, and it was with the affirmative recommendation of those changes that what had been OPRE transitioned to UCMU. Sorry, OPRE is Oakland Public Realm Subdistrict E, and UCMU is Urban Center Mixed Use. The reason for that change, again, both in the name and in the structure, was to align with recommendations that continue to be incorporated into the draft Oakland plan. And I'm happy to report that a number of modifications were made, including reducing the scope of the overall rezoning, the exclusion of the parklet from the scope of this rezoning, and some other adjustments to enhance residential compatibility, notably the inclusion of affordable housing requirements and other similar enhancements. So the administration, based on that dialogue, is supportive of this legislation as adjusted based on the Planning Commission process. We are also supportive of your proposed amendments today. The substantive change there, as you yourself noted, is a minor modification to building length, increasing the maximum allowable building length from 400 to 425 feet to, as you pointed out, accommodate internal truck loading, which will minimize the street-facing footprint of the loading activities necessary to support the grocery store. The other components in the amendment on the table today that the chair read are adjustments to the public benefit agreement that had been agreed to as part of that negotiated process. Notably, the inclusion in the agreement of the historic preservation of the Isley site. That's relevant because in an earlier version of the legislation, more specific protections were articulated for that site, but I think correctly deemed to be too site-specific for base zoning. I will note that there are historic preservation bonus points included in the zoning language, so there are multiple paths toward ensuring that that preservation can occur, but we felt it prudent in kind of a belt and suspenders sense, right, to be doubly certain to explicitly include that protection in the public benefit agreement to ensure the public and everyone that the facade preservation that had been proposed for that location will be required. So, beyond that, I think you've accurately, Councilman, described the history here. This is certainly a very unique set of circumstances in that this legislation was initiated by a prior administration, and we are, grateful for the cooperation of council, planning staff, others, community stakeholders, and the developer for reaching a resolution here. I don't pretend that there is 100% agreement, but it is reflective of a broad consensus and compromise around the best path forward. It would not be the Gainey administration's intention to initiate another similar process in the future, but we are fully supportive of this result. And thank council for their time. And I'm happy to remain to answer questions, but that's the bulk of the issue. So thank you.
So Director Pollack, if you'll stay with me for just a minute while I sidebar here. Madam Clerk, can you tell me, please, was just the small verbiage of the amendment distributed to members, or was the community benefits agreement distributed to members as well?
It's there. Everything was distributed this morning when it was presented to us around 10 a.m. this morning.
Yeah, and I do apologize. That hiccup is on my plate. I'm sure many of you know the crazy time I've been experiencing here, trying to sort of handle some activity that's taken place in the South Side here, and I spoke with Councilwoman Gross this morning. I appreciate her conversation with me. I apologize for the lateness of that. I did speak in public arenas on several occasions that I would ask for this to be on today's standing committee agenda, but failed to communicate that to the clerk, and that's my bad, and I apologize for that. But in terms of the Isley building, if we could go a little bit deeper into that conversation, Director, there's always been a desire from the beginning of the discussions to preserve the building because of the significance of the building. And I know it, to allay any conversation around conspiracy or, intentional, purpose or misuse of that we, I know it existed originally in the zoning document. I believe it was the desire of the zoning administrator to see it not live there, that it really should be part of the community benefits agreement, but then it didn't quite make it into the community benefits agreement, but it is in there now. If you could speak to, forgive me, how that came to be, and to assure any reservations that anyone might have that the building is not going to be protected. One other thing I would add to that is the verbiage of facade really applies to the front of a building by definition. There has been some discussion, largely created by me, that perhaps that might read a little bit differently to make certain that the building on all four sides is protected in its entirety, that the tiles are removed, cataloged, restored, and replaced in exactly the same way that the building exists now. So without going too deep into the weeds, if you could, for the benefit of the public at large, speak a little bit about the Isley building and how that came to be, and then it will now be protected.
Yes, happy to, Councilman. And your recounting is correct. Generally, there's a sequencing issue, frankly, that led to the necessity of the amendment in order to ensure that the original intent around preservation there is preserved. Just to note, I believe quickly, in the original language, there were two provisions intended to preserve the historic features of the Isley building. One is the inclusion of historic preservation bonus points in the bonus point structure, which are, as we understand them, necessary for the proposed redeveloper to achieve in order to meet the height, the height that they're aiming for in their proposed design. So there is, even within the zoning text, historic preservation language that is necessary for the project as envisioned to be completed. There had also been some language that was specific to the preservation there that, as you correctly note, was determined not to be appropriate for base zoning. And so that language has since been simply migrated from the zoning legislation into the public benefit agreement, so that it is functionally the same, right? The protection is still there, the commitment is still there from the proposed redeveloper, but it is captured for legal purposes in a different document that's more appropriate to that kind of building-specific, site-specific one-off commitment. So there are two mechanisms for protection here: the bonus point structure, which calls for historic preservation, and then a supplemental site-specific commitment to the preservation of the facade of the structure. And I believe you are correct in this sense. When I say facade, I mean the entire exterior facade of the building, not simply the frontage facade.
And Director, could you go a little bit deeper for us on the amendment that would permit an additional 25 feet to be added to the grocery development there? Does it have impact beyond that building? Does it extend down Halkett Street? And would it have unintended impact or consequence that we might not have thought through?
It's the minimum building length established for that sub area of the proposed zone, I believe it would only apply in that, it would only apply to that sub-district zone, the boundary of which I believe is bisected at Louisa Street. So I don't believe that minimum length would impact any of the other sub-districts in this zone or any other zones.
Just that we could have further assurance that that is indeed the case. I apologize, I'm at a disadvantage, so I don't have the map in front of me and don't want to make mischaracterizations. But if we could find a way to make certain that that was indeed the case and that there was not a unintended consequence by offering that amendment, I would like that reassurance, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I can check that right now, and I believe answer that before we leave the table. But I'm happy to continue the discussion while I do that.
Thanks, Director. And that's all I have at this moment in time, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I'd be happy to turn it back to the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have Reverend Burgess.
Sure. I certainly will support Councilman Kraus and the administration in approving this amendment to the zoning code. I will support it now and in its final vote when that happens. I am grateful for the passion of my friend and colleague, Councilwoman Gross. I will remind her and council of her comments last week talking about historic review. I agree with her wholeheartedly, and that the powers of council over land use is absolutely absolute. And so we are certainly today doing that thing in a way that she proposed for last week. But I want to make it clear, because I think there were some statements unintentionally spoken that were in error. And so I just want to talk about process so that we all, including the public, can understand the process. And you know, it is normally council's sort of working philosophy that we defer to the members whose district it is in, and we typically support developments in those districts, although as now, sometimes we do not, right? We have the right that if there is something in another council district that we vehemently oppose to, like for me in historic designation, that we vote our conscience. A couple of things in terms of the misspoken. I just want to remind council and the public of council's process. And that's really very easy. First thing is nothing can come to council at any time in any way without one of its members being the sponsor. And so no matter where it originates from, no matter who writes it, any person, any citizen has the same right to come to council and say, here's some legislation. In fact, my work with 32BJ is an example. Oftentimes they have come to me with legislation and we have amended it. Same thing with healthcare. I've worked with an SAU healthcare. I've worked with those entities with legislation they proposed, and we have amended it and introduced it. And once I introduce it, doesn't matter where it comes from, once it hits this table, it must be introduced by a council person. Only a council person can introduce legislation to this table. And so any legislation that hits this table must be introduced by a council person. Therefore, it will have a council person initially as a sponsor. Second of all, in terms of the planning commission work, there are only two entities then that can initiate an amendment specific to the zoning code. Remember, we said before, council is the final arbiter of land use, as we talked about last week. Therefore, an amendment to city code can only, to the zoning code, can only be introduced by either the planning commission or council. Now, if it has no sponsor, so when the planning commission gives us an amendment, it will have a sponsor of an entity. That entity will then come to council from the planning commission and get introduced. However, if another entity that's not the planning commission introduces it, gives it to council, and then council introduces it, then the sponsor becomes city council. So in actuality, I just want to be clear process-wise, city council is the sponsor of the original zoning amendment because it had no initial sponsor, and we did introduce it. When there is no individual from the Planning Commission whose name is on it, and any member introduces it, then council itself becomes its sponsor. So to answer, I just want to be clear in the process, because I think, I'm sure passion, people are very passionate and sometimes misspeak. But we are officially, when it was introduced without a sponsor, certainly originated from the administration. So I want to make it clear, regardless of our feelings about the past administration, they did what was in their power and right to do. Council has done explicitly what's in its power and right to do. As you yourself said last week, it is not the Planning Commission. It's not the Historic Review Commission. It is council who is the arbiter of land use in the city of Pittsburgh. And that power is absolute. And so I say all that to say, I just want to make it clear, so that we're all clear that nothing nefarious has occurred, that there is a sponsor to both the original legislation, which is City Council, and that Councilman Lavelle, Councilman Kraus is the sponsor of this amendment. We will hold it. We will pass it on Wednesday, and then we will finally pass it on Tuesday, which I believe gives it probably maybe one less day than it would normally have, but still a long time in terms of having the public to weigh in. And they may agree or disagree. On a side note, I think I have been involved with, certainly not private development, but I think I've been involved with as much public development as any other member of council. And when you do development of this scale, you're always going to have this conversation, right? And community benefits and misagreements and disagreements and, but we are moving our city forward. Having this development in Oakland, which the first phase of it has been in the paper, giving that neighborhood a grocery store, putting affordable housing where the people who work at Pitt, the security guards, the housekeepers, will be able to live there and walk to work, can be transformational to those families. Because although we talk about affordable housing, one of the most severe limits of affordable housing is quality housing to working people, people in unions, people who are, janitors and people who are security guards, and all those hardworking people who are working 40 hours every day but do not make a lot of money. And the affordable housing in this project will be in a place probably where those residents will be able to walk to work and walk back into high quality amenities and a grocery store and all the benefits of Oakland. So I both support the amendment, but I also support the project because it will move our city forward in a way that shows that new development can be for all and be a bright shining star for all. So and I want to thank Water Capital and their leadership in this and their willingness to compromise for all parties. I do understand that there will be, disagreements, but I look forward to it passing and us moving forward. Thank you very much for this moment.
Thank you. Any other members? First round, Councilwoman Strasburger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to weigh in on the process. Councilman Kraus, I have a greater level of comfort with the amendment now that you walked through it with us, and I appreciate that. Thank you to Director Pollack for answering questions as well. That said, given that this was, and also Councilman Kraus, I give you all the credit in the world for doing what you've been doing these last few days and really rubber hitting the road when it comes to the work that you're doing throughout your district. So no fault to you. But I would feel much more comfortable process-wise, if we're going to be holding the bill anyway for a week, if we also held off on voting on the amendment. I know that the legal advice that we received from our parliamentarian was that we could indeed vote on the amendment. I personally would feel more comfortable holding that as well for a week and then voting on the amendment and the bill after a week of percolation throughout the community. But that's just my opinion. I wanted to share it.
We already voted the amendment.
I thought that Councilwoman Gross stopped it before we actually voted yes.
No. She chimed in after we had voted it.
I see. Okay.
So we're on
My
the
bad.
bill as amended.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, point of order, I think.
Councilman?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Is there, and maybe this is our parliamentarian, is there a way to roll back the action of the amendment? And I want to thank Director Pollock for being here and his insight. I personally want an elevated comfort that the 25-foot extension applies solely to that building that is going to house the grocery and not to go down Halkett Street in its entirety.
Mr. Chair, I actually have an answer to the councilman's inquiry about that, if that might help at this point.
Yes, please.
Okay. So Councilman, I actually misspoke in my earlier comment as I was had in my mind the prior map of the subzones. UCMU is a single district, including Halkett Street, what most people would think of as that block of those 2 blocks, of Halkett Street, the Quality Inn site, and the Isley site. So the minimum or maximum building length would apply to the entire zone.
I cannot support that, Director. And not that anyone intentionally misled anyone. I don't mean to imply that in any way. But my understanding of the amendment was to make it applicable to the grocer because of the need for the need to be able to house the more disruptive aspects of housing a grocer in a dense area like that. And so I'm going to need that to be applicable only to that building. And I apologize for any additional confusion here as to how to make that happen. Should we refer to our clerk procedurally how we might, or is this better, Mr. Chair? Do we leave it as is? We will hold a week and then re-amend at the next Wednesday discussion?
We can do, so we have taken no official action on the bill yet. We've only voted to amend it. If members are comfortable, we could have a motion to withdraw that amendment. We could vote on that and withdraw the amendment. You could potentially work on whatever changes you need, and then we amend the following week.
That would be my preference, Mr. Chair, if we could make that action happen, please.
I'm just checking with the parliamentarian. I believe I'm correct. Okay.
You can strike the vote. So you can strike the prior vote and then put this amendment in for public comment and then vote.
How do you get it in public comment if it's not amended? How do they see it? It has to be amended for them to see it. It wouldn't be introduced to the public. So
Councilman Kraus, we're having a sidebar with the parliamentarian to make sure we're doing everything above and aboard.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it.
I think it.
Point of order. We could also just have it as in motions, resolutions as a public document. We don't have to actually amend the legislation for the public to see it.
We need a microphone. I apologize. I'm sorry for the public. Can you please talk into the mic? Sorry, Mr. Chair.
They won't see it.
And so we can, I'm sorry, I'm not good with these mics. So we can keep it as amended, let it go for next week for public comment, and then the council can vote as it's been amended, making that final action.
So, just so we're all clear, our parliamentarian's recommendation is to vote on the bill as amended, hold it for a week, and then Councilman Kraus, you amend the bill further next week. Am I correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So if he's amending it further, those amendments still need to get to get to the public. So if you're going to vote on those amendments, those would need to be put in ahead of time, or we have to hold off another week once the amendments come in.
Councilman Kraus, you would need to have whatever amendment you're proposing for next week would need to be in to the clerk before our actual meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I kind of lost who has the floor, but I would like to do second round, Mr. Chair, when it's available. Thank you.
We're still on first round. Is there any other member for first round? If not, I have second round, Councilwoman Gross, then Councilman Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to address some of the comments earlier. I am not confused about process, and I would like to clarify how confusing some members are talking about the zoning process by conflating words like who is a bill sponsor, who introduced a bill, and who is the arbiter of land use. So don't conflate those three words, right, as some members have been jumbling them up for the public to make it even more confusing. Every member at this table claims to not be the sponsor of 1906. So as some members have been trying to make it confusing, no member has attached their name as
You're right, 'cause the
sponsor
city
to
council
this bill.
is.
Please do not interrupt me.
I'm sorry, city council is.
I did not interrupt you.
I didn't interrupt.
I did not interrupt you.
Well, then speak truth.
Please stop speaking, and I will. So, since there is no, right, and we have always, in our Legistar system, you can see bills that have been introduced by the administration, by the mayor. In fact, they're not even called administrative bills. They're introduced by the mayor, right? They come over on the mayor's agenda to our city clerk on Fridays by noon, by home rule charter. We can put them on the table or we cannot. Mr. Kraus has many times, not only in this case, attested that he likes to see bills discussed when they come over from the mayor. And he thinks that he believes that that is our duty. I do not, but he does believe it is our duty. And, but that is not the same as a council person sponsoring the legislation, right? In this case from 1906, no member of this council put that bill on the table as the sponsor. The mayor is the sponsor.
Yes.
That is not, please, I have the floor. This is not interrogatory. So, our municipal code, right? This is not a resolution just for discussion. This is not a minor text change to some administrative policy in our ordinance. This is a zoning map change, and that is addressed specifically on its own about how it can get to the table. And the Planning Commission can send it to council. The Planning Commission did not send 1906 as a new paper to council. That is how our entire zoning code has been amended in the past, right? If the administration wants city council, and it is our power, I am not confused by it, Mr. Burgess. I think you are conflating things. Then the Planning Commission must discuss it first publicly before it is sent over to council to be laid on the table by one of us as a new paper. That did not happen here. Right, so don't get mixed up about who's the arbiter. Of course, city council only has the final vote. No one is confused by that. How this bill originated is the source of my concern and discomfort. I do not believe it followed due process according to Muni Code. If you'd like to see municipal code, here it is. Here it is, I believe this one. Right, the Planning Commission or the City Council may initiate a zoning map and or text amendment with or without an application from the property owner. Right, and that did not happen in this case. The other way, a property owner itself can also say, hey, I would like to change the zoning of my property. And they have the absolute right. You know what they do? They walk into the desk. They walk into the desk at the planning department and they file an application. Did anyone here who owned these properties file the application for the zoning change? No. I see Walnut Capital's attorney has finally turned off his camera, but guess what? They don't own these properties. So that wasn't the path that was taken here either. So I have discomfort there. I would also like to address some of, changing the topic. I think a really important goal for council is to help foster the creation of more housing and housing that it is affordable to our workers, certainly our workers at the universities and our workers at the hospitals who we know are some of the lowest paid in our region and can't afford to live in the city. And we have all marched and demonstrated. Certainly I've done a lot of marching and demonstrating about how I think their pay should be higher and so that they can more affordably live in the city. However, I believe that this zoning map amendment purports to upzone and increase density, but I don't believe that it does. The density of this area is already, parts of it are between 5,000 and 10,000 people per square mile, and parts of it are 10,000 people or more per square mile. That is incredibly dense. It's definitely dense compared to our region, which has an average of 5,000 people per square mile. I think the city of Pittsburgh has an average of 5,000 people per square mile. And again, I'm not going to circle this probably perfectly, but for example, we talked a lot about Halkett here today, and that's partly dark blue, which is at least medium blue. I don't know that I think I'm looking at the colors correctly. At 10,000 people or more per square mile. This is 2020 census data. And part of it maybe I think also dips down into the slightly lighter color, which is 5 to 10,000 people per square mile. What I've seen happen in our new construction, right? Even if you're adding height, you're adding a concomitant number of car spaces to apartments, right? And so when you have, because I represent them myself, and I've really looked at this about like, well, where do we add density in District 7? Again, having sought to create housing, but also create affordable housing, because I represent neighborhoods of opportunity, which is where cities in the United States are supposed to be encouraging affordability. And some of the densest parts of my district are some of the just little 2-story timber houses that are crowded into like 9th Ward Bloomfield, are in the same levels of density. If you tore them down, you really almost can't build that high. And the reason is they were built without any parking, right? They were built before we had parking requirements. And so you have a lot of people crowded into very tiny footprints, right? Some of the parts of my district have parcels that are only 12 feet wide. 12 feet is very narrow. And so you get a lot of people crammed into a very small amount of space. What I've also seen here, and I don't believe it was changed in the amendments today, was that there's a great deal of the proposal in front of us that changes areas that are currently residential, and allows them to be public assembly, allows them to be kind of like, I don't know, maybe classroom use or other kinds of uses where you won't have housing. Somebody correct me. I don't know if Director Pollock, if you can speak to that, but I contend that this proposal is highly likely to decrease the housing in this footprint, even though the spin is different. Let me ask Director Pollock if I've said any of that incorrectly.
Speaking specifically to the last topic you raised, Councilwoman, in the changes between the originally proposed 1906 OPRE to the revised UCMU, a large number of what had been proposed as permitted uses in the original version were eliminated, including specifically university campus and many of the other assembly uses that you just cited as examples. Those that remain are those typically associated with first floor retail in a multi-story structure. So retail uses that one would imagine being part of the first or second story of a mixed-use development continue to be permitted, but the types of public assembly or university campus uses that I know many members of the public were rightly concerned about during the initial consideration here were eliminated as part of the compromise reached between the administration and the proposed redeveloper. I believe that there are some limited uses associated with like training, that are for the purposes of the code classified as classroom that are permitted but they are edge cases and not the same thing as the sort of what a campus would look like. They're not the institutional master plan style uses like university campus that had been included in the original draft. So they have been significantly curtailed and are consistent generally with the types of uses that are permitted elsewhere in the city for mixed-use development. There are no uniquely permitted uses here beyond what one would expect for a combined, primarily residential building with a first floor retail component. Of course, the grocery store use is also permitted, and it is, I believe, envisioned by the proposed redeveloper that the portion of the site at the intersection of the Boulevard of the Allies and Halkett, where they propose to have a grocery store, would have a greater mix of uses than the residential buildings elsewhere. But I would not categorize the uses that are proposed under the revised plan that was affirmatively recommended by Planning Commission as being out of the ordinary as it relates to mixed-use development. You are correct, however, in stating that the amendment introduced today does not address that topic. But again, that is because those uses had already been eliminated in the previous round of revision.
So maybe that gives me some small comfort, but I would love to see between now and when council's, whenever voting finally on, either the Oakland plan, which I'm also just noticing this morning was actually voted on yesterday by Planning Commission, but is a different plan that will also be coming to us and is not this plan. I would like to see projections on density. If all of the parcels that we're faced with in rezoning for the public realm here are then the ownership swaps happen. I understand that Walnut Capital has sales agreements on almost the entirety of this footprint. I'm not sure. I don't have the facts in front of me, but like those facts. And then if they are then demolished and built, kind of how that density changes. Again, I've been thinking about this for my own district, so this is not something that is just a new thought for me. But when I look at the historic pre-car, pre-zoning code housing that exists in my district, I am struck by the density, right? Some of the densest housing that you see nationwide. To be at 10,000 people or more per square mile is very high density. It's the kind of density that we're trying to achieve in our urban core, where we have fixed transit or high frequency transit, which I know we have partners that are advocating for, like Pittsburghers for Public Transit. We want to have more robust support for public transit in the city. That these are the kind of neighborhoods that are located near things like grocery stores and churches and schools and have walkability, et cetera. And so we don't want to go backwards. And so while it's technically upzoning because you can build taller or you can build wider, like the amendment today, I still question, that doesn't on its face guarantee a higher density. And so I would love to see, and maybe follow up with the planning department to actually see what kinds of projections we see. Does this map amendment for this Oakland public realm take us backwards or take us forwards in density? I'm a skeptic, so you'll have to just forgive me for that. But based on numbers that I'm looking at, I want to see the numbers. And okay, so we talked about Director Pollack. I didn't ask you about this question that I have, the discomfort with the path. That is the legal path. If you want to respond, please feel free. But before you do, thank you to members for being willing to not rush a vote today and for allowing the public to take time. I heard us saying, forget the background noise, you can hear the dogs. I heard us, our solicitors, the mayor's solicitor, saying that we would have to put any future amendments on the agenda for the public to see them. We've only been putting them out 24 hours in advance. I don't think that passes legal muster for a zoning map amendment, right? And I didn't hear anyone speak to whether these substantive changes should go back to Planning Commission. And again, I've had to struggle with this myself, right? We did not make amendments to the inclusionary zoning map amendments that we wanted to. We sacrificed changes that we wanted because they would have been substantive changes that would have sent us back to Planning Commission. So I'm not making this stuff up. This is the reality that we deal with it. And so I want us to stay in reality here and not just suspend reality and do something differently. So Director Pollack, you can feel free to respond to that.
Councilman, two responses to two items that you raised. One is that the guidance that the administration has received from legal counsel is consistent with the discussion at the table earlier that when an administration, a mayoral administration, sends legislation to council for introduction, that is, in effect, a request, but that upon receiving, accepting, and ultimately entering the paper, it becomes a council-initiated action. I cannot speak to the question of whether that is initiated by the individual member handing the paper over or council as a body, but that is consistent with what we've been advised by law. And as a result, this legislation would meet the criteria in code for how it is introduced. I would also add that because of that, it would be outside of the mayor's office's discretion as to whether to withdraw it, because it would not have been initiated by us. or by the mayor or his office, I should say. To your latter question, we've further been advised by the law department as of yesterday that in light of the amendment on the table, it would be advisable for the consideration of this legislation to follow the rules that would relate to a negative recommendation, meaning that a 7-2 vote would be required as opposed to the typical 6-3, but that it would not, that the nature of the amendment itself would not trigger re-referral to Planning Commission. That is a question that we asked specifically because we wanted to understand the same information that you had asked, and so I'm relaying their guidance to us on that topic.
I said that was a completely different new topic, so that was an interesting one. I would interpret the Planning Commission's recommendations to council as being not satisfied. Yes, there was a positive recommendation, but with conditions.
Right.
And have we met those conditions?
That is the point that I was just making. That by modifying one of the provisions that was included in those conditions, it would be necessary to for the vote to be counted as if it were a negative recommendation, again, which would require a 7-2, but it would not require re-referral, is their guidance to us. I just spoke to the assistant solicitor about this after you raised that point to confirm my understanding, and he advised that that's correct.
I think you lost me. When the bill, in our recommendation, right, the recommendation from Planning Commission doesn't change. There's no amending that. That's what stands in record. The Planning Commission only recommended it with conditions. So I don't interpret that as a positive recommendation if the conditions are not met. And I thought that Planning Commission's recommendations were about reducing height. It's hard to keep everything up on, I can say I have a big desktop with a lot of things in front of me, but I don't have that one up as well. And I don't have that much paper in front of me either.
The relevant distinction here is not about height, it is about building length. The Planning Commission recommendation was for 400 feet. The amendment, the only zoning substantive section of the amendment before council today is changing 400 feet to 425 feet. All of the other material in the amendment is actually a documentation of changes to the public benefit agreement, but they don't affect the zoning text. So just for the sake of clarity here, the change here is in building length, not height.
Okay, I apologize. So I thought the Planning Commission wanted us to go lower than 400 feet. I thought it was height, but so it's...
The Planning Commission's recommendation was for 400 feet.
So we would need a 7-2 vote to pass this bill as we've amended it.
That is the guidance of the law department, yes.
Okay, I think I got you now. Because we just went the opposite way of what the Planning Commission, the experts, recommended to council.
Right, and that is the reason for their guidance that frankly, it falls into an area that I would say is perhaps not fully contemplated by the code as written, and so their guidance in an abundance of caution would be to rely on the vote thresholds for a negative recommendation in order to ensure that it is satisfied, given that there's a modification that steps outside of the conditional recommendations of the commission. But they believe that is sufficient and that re-referral to the commission is not called for based on the code.
Well, again, I've talked to a number of attorneys on bills in my own district on my own zoning amendment bill, so there's that. And I think I'm gonna, I won't belabor this much longer today, Mr. Chair, but I think there is a lot of things to be discussed about how there is no council sponsor to this bill. And I noticed that our solicitor's office and our director and some of our members are using the word about council initiated action, right? Now, if I put a new paper on the table on Tuesday, there's no stopping me, right? But does that mean that all of council has initiated it? Because other members can't stop me from putting a new paper on the table. And so I think that's a really curious assertion that the moment a member puts agrees to hand in and not pocket veto mayor's proposed agenda item, as some members would have us do because the mayor deserves to be heard, then we've suddenly also then claimed that it's council initiated action. So it's, it feels like everyone's trying to have their cake and eat it too. And that what we're doing is creating a lot of gray area. And so I'm not sure I'm comfortable with it. So I think that's a discussion we should maybe have at length for another day. It's not irrelevant here, and it's the cause of my discomfort. But I won't, again, we've been going on, and I've brought that point up multiple times, and I think I've gotten my message through. So I'll pause there, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Kraus?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just for Councilwoman Gross's comfort level, the recommendations that were made by Planning Commission in order to receive their positive recommendation were already amended in the bill previously by this council, and that is the bill that we have on the table right now. So we met the requirement there. And then in terms of the community benefits agreement, if I may just ask one more question of Director Pollack. Director Pollack, the community benefits agreement, is that attached to the legislation? Is it become a piece of what it is? I know we don't vote on community benefits agreements. I understand that, but does the agreement get attached to the legislation so there's no misunderstanding as to what the agreements are?
Yeah, that's correct, Councilman. The agreement is attached essentially as a reference document to the legislation, so the council is aware of its contents, and that is why the amendment paper that was provided to members today lists the changes to the agreement. You're correct, the council is not voting on those changes themselves, as they are not part of the legal action, but it is attached for reference, and so the changes to it have similarly been attached for reference.
Thank you, Director. Appreciate it. Mr. Chair, may I then call for a one-week hold on the bill?
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The bill will be held for 1 week.
Mr. Chair.
Thanks, everybody.
Councilman Burgess.
Just as a point of personal preference, let me apologize for Councilwoman Gross for interrupting her, although not excuse. Before this meeting today, I received some very, very tragic news, and so I'm not quite myself today. I think my patience is not where it should be, and so to my friend and colleague, let me apologize publicly for something that I did publicly.
Thank you, Councilman. That will take us to Bill 270.
Bill 270, ordinance supplementing the Pittsburgh Code Title 7 Business Licensing Article 7, Business Licenses, by creating a new Chapter 768, Accessory Short-Term Rentals.
Motion to approve. Discussion.
Second.
Discussion with Councilman Wilson.
Thank you. I have an amendment that I'd like to make. I'd like to take the vote on, then I can explain. So motion to amend.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the amendment?
Yes. This amendment effectively does a lot of the what I've been saying to the media, what I wanted to do, of what, for instance, I think would have assisted law enforcement in the case of the Airbnb shooting, on how to connect public safety better to a short-term rental property that would have a party that would not be in agreement with the lease. It makes transparency. It provides transparency to who owns the property. A responsible local agent If the owner is out of town, they have to, similar to rental registration, they must identify that individual. So there are a host of these amendments to the bill that I believe will strengthen it. Basically, the way I see it is that there are two things going on here. One, we don't know where the short-term rentals are. Two, which is based on one, we have to take account for and understand what's out there. And then number two, there is discussion amongst the sponsors of the bill and also the administration and other members here have suggested as well about a zoning requirement. So this bill is not number two, it is number one. It is to literally to create a system where we would identify and require them to register and receive a license. So I want to thank the sponsors and then also the council and also the administration. I do want to note that I will be asking for a hold for a week after talks with the administration on some amendments that they'd like to put forth, and so I'm happy to work with them so that we can at the end of the day have the strongest bill to put regulation around short-term rentals in the city of Pittsburgh.
Okay, so we're still on the amendment. Council President?
Chair?
I just want to thank Councilman Wilson and Mohammed in his office and our solicitor, Dan Friedson, for all working together and putting together. We received so many requests or suggestions for amendments, so much information from the public, and it was, he offered early on to take the amendments for this portion, and Councilwoman Gross offered to do the section for the zoning. So between the two of them, they're doing a great job, but I want to thank Councilman Wilson and Mohammed and Solicitor Friedson and our law department, whomever helped on this. But I just want to thank you very much for putting a great piece together and making sure you addressed a lot of the concerns that people had and putting this all together. So thank you, Councilman Wilson, for being such a great listener and working with everyone. And working with the administration, I might add.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Kraus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilman Wilson. Mr. Chair, will you permit interrogatory, please?
Yes.
Councilman, good morning.
Morning.
You've probably heard I've had a little on my plate lately. And by the way, Councilwoman Strasburger, thank you for your kind remarks. They were taken to heart and I really appreciate them. My question about this, and I really am glad you're going to hold this for a week because I'm reading this as we're having the discussion and don't want to make an ill-informed decision. My only question at this moment in time is this attached to rental registry in any way, and will it lead us into possibly any further legal delay for the implementation of rental registry?
This bill creates a new chapter, and it's on their business licensing, not included. So to answer you clearly, no, it is not attached to rental registry. And it does make reference to parts of the short-term rental in terms of, for instance, in the penalties and violations section. I mean, it is using similar, in terms of similar terms like responsible local agent, but within the severability clause, we also include, we believe all the necessary language, to separate this completely. But the hold for 1 week is, just to air out those concerns, and also to coordinate with the administration on what they're, what they've been working on, because they've been working specifically, directly with the solicitor on the solicitor's recommendations so that we don't get into some sort of legal battle over this.
Yeah, which is exactly what we want to avoid, risking the implementation of the rental registry any further by any means is a road I don't want to go down. So I appreciate that. I have one more question as well. This does not determine the length the length of stay. I'll just say it that way. This does not define length of stay. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, Councilman, I will call you. I really appreciate you willing to take a little bit of time with this, and happy to give you a phone call. I will take it offline so that other members will have their time to speak. But appreciate your efforts on this, and I'd like to help any way I can. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank Councilwoman Gross.
I'm sorry, there was noise. Was that my name?
Yes.
Sorry, thank you. Also, Councilman Wilson, thank you for this draft. But it would, I think, be helpful for all of us, sponsors especially, to be, have a briefing on it. Certainly, I've been having meetings also with operators. My staff has been doing research, and again, I'm just opening it also since we had various amendments come in just this morning, obviously on the previous bill that we spent some time on. And so I'm still trying to process, and I see some things that I thought belonged in this section that I would like to see here that aren't here. And so I'm sure we'll have friendly, I'm sorry, there's still background noise, I don't know what that was, friendly amendments for next week. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Councilwoman Strasburger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilman Wilson, for all your work and your staff's work on this. I'm glad to see some of the language that was used in rental registration used here, even if they're not actually, one and the same. It's a smart approach, the responsible local agent, making sure that there's a published list so that the public can find, without having to search the actual short-term rental sites, which ones are indeed short-term rentals. The definition of disorderly short-term rental caught my attention, and it's a little bit different from what's in the language here. I guess my question as a sort of tangent from that is there anything in this bill or in city code that would prevent this from any short-term rental from being subject to the disruptive properties task force scrutiny by the, just purely by the nature of like the tenants are changing constantly. They're not the same tenants that, you'd find in a long-term rental. Is there anything that would stop that from also being an enforcement agency here?
I'm sorry, are you?
Oh, interrogatory, please, if the sponsor's willing.
We don't, we're not referencing that piece of ordinance, but this similar in some ways. Basically, there is this. There are Airbnb rules, and this is just to strengthen those rules that they currently have on the books, and so that we can, just make sure that as there are complaints about the property, that they're recorded in a fashion so that there can be decisions made on whether or not they lose their license.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm particularly pleased to see that they must adhere to the sort of occupancy that any other rental would have to adhere to, and that homeowner associations or condo association rules would apply here as well. In the penalties section,
it would still be.
I understand that it's explicitly stated what the penalties and enforcement will look like. I guess my question is, following that thread a little bit, do we know just from the conversations that you've had, what more we will be able to do once this is law to be able to take action with a particular company that is then refusing to take a particularly problematic unit offline, off their site, even when it's in violation of this code. Like, what is our recourse then with that company?
So it would go through the typical PLI process. So for instance, if you're, just the way the typical filing process would happen if you're violating, there's a extensive list of situations where PLI doesn't have an automatic fine, and that they're taken to the magistrate or higher court, depending on how that process goes. But I will say that in discussion with the administration, there are talks of putting a fine in place. So it's open for discussion.
Great. Well, similar to Councilwoman Gross, I too would be interested in a briefing, and particularly, what I've read today makes sense. I understand it. What I'm interested in is understanding, of all of the kind of panoply of options we had to include here and that were not included, sort of an understanding of why. I think all council members have received suggestions, comments, ideas for amendments to include in the bill, and I am interested in hearing and would be happy to then repeat publicly next week what we discussed privately for the public's benefit, kind of answers to those questions, but would be interested in hearing kind of how we came to this and why there isn't the inclusion of some things that we've heard suggested by various individuals and entities. So look forward to that conversation.
Yeah, if I could just make a brief comment to that.
Absolutely.
Well, I was, happy to include the HOA rules that, I know I represent a few different areas, head of HOAs, and, and some of your concerns with that. So I'm happy to include those measures in here. And then, moving forward over this next week, look forward to addressing those concerns or questions that are still, haven't been answered, or people that, members that feel that something should be included here that wasn't. I will say there were items that were sent over that I believe fits into a zoning bill rather than in this bill. For instance, when you get into occupancy, this bill, for single family homes, no one that's living in a single family home is required to have a certificate of occupancy. So, but obviously it grows from there, and that's where I believe it leads into, if we're going to talk about different types of units, that will be included in a zoning piece. So, but thanks for all your help.
Thank you. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The bill has been amended. Any discussion on the bill as amended?
It's a motion to hold for 1 week.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The bill be held 1 week. Takes us to Bill 291.
Bill 291, resolution approving a conditional use application under the Pittsburgh Code Title 9 Zoning Article 4, Chapter 910 to Myers, Unkovich, and Scott on behalf of the 306th Avenue Property LLC for the transfer of development rights involving 33 dwelling units from 130 through 165th Avenue Zone, GTA Golden Triangle Subdistrict A, and 5 dwelling units from 417 Wood Street Zone, GTA Golden Triangle Subdistrict A, to 306th Avenue Zone, GTA Golden Triangle Subdistrict A, First Ward, Council District 6.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Our last bill is Bill 433.
Bill 433, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of city planning to enter into a professional services agreement with McKay Lodge Conservation Laboratory for conservation and preparation services for the Virgil Cantini mural relocation project for an amount not to exceed $359,093.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Second. Mr. Chair?
Councilman Kraus?
Well, this sounds like a very interesting undertaking, and I know we've been here long today, and I won't belabor it, but whoever may have come here to speak to this today, love a phone call into the office to talk a little bit further about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That exhausts our agenda for today. We do have meeting announcements. On Monday, June 20th, our offices will be closed in observance of Juneteenth. Next week, council will hold our regular standing committee meetings on Tuesday, June 21st and Wednesday, June 22nd at 10 a.m. Speaker registration closes at 9 a.m. Tuesday and Wednesday morning. Also tomorrow, Thursday, June 16th at 6 p.m. at the Southside HAL Senior Center at 12th and Bingham Streets, council will hold an in-person only public hearing on the city's proposed annexation of Wilkinsburg. Registration closes at 3 p.m. June 16th. To register to speak at these meetings and hearings, please fill out the sign-up form on the council meeting webpage. You may also call the city clerk's office at 412-255-2138 or email cityclerksoffice@pittsburghpa.gov. Anything from members, Madam President?
Thank you. I'd like to call for a post-agenda, maybe a public hearing, but I'll call for both a post-agenda and public hearing, televised. I was going to call for RCOs in the city of Pittsburgh, but I think I'm going to call for city planning so we can discuss RCOs in the Art Commission.
Second.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Anything else from members? If not, need a motion to approve the minutes and adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.